I was just reflecting on how things change. And when I first bought my property here out in the desert, this was a dirt road with big washboards and potholes and big rocks sticking out of the ground. And sometimes after the rain was enough to like sheet across the land, it would get eroded away, and we'd have to use equipment to fix it, to make it traversable again for a passenger vehicle. And there's a lot of things that can change with time and awareness and energy being placed in a new direction. And when we put our energy in a new direction, we achieve different results, right? And I guess where I'm going with this is things we have to be educated in what things are called and what we and I guess we have to be aware of our rights, right? Like my rights end where your rights begin is a pretty common denominator. Self-ownership. I own me and you own you. And if you have a good idea and you share it with me and you want some help, I'll probably help you voluntarily because it would probably benefit both of us. But if it's not a good idea, I'll just keep doing what I do, right? Because that's what makes sense. When we start allowing an entity that it has the probability of benefiting if they were to make certain decisions and choices and could get people thinking and acting a certain way, we can't we can't remain ignorant about what our rights are. So like right now, I'm on a public right of way, right? I'm sorry, no, it's a private right of way because this is all private land up here. We even own the road. And Pacific Power wanted to make a deal with us. If they ran power poles out here, then they would pave the road too. So we let them do that. Well, I didn't want it, but the neighbors did. So anyway, this is a private right of way, and if I was in an area that was open to the public, it would be a public right of way. Because if I need to get from here to there, it would be rude for me just to like drive across your front lawn, or or like I don't know. I mean, drive through the corner of your house because that's the direction I wanted to go to get from here to there. I mean that wouldn't work out well for anybody. So what we do though is we allow people access into certain areas, usually right along the front edge of the property, because that makes sense. And if we do what makes sense, then people can get past our property without trespassing or driving through my living room. And so if someday this area were to become incorporated and they drew a little stripe down the middle of the road and then said you have to drive on this side or on that side, and it was an incorporated name of what our road is called, then commerce, that's where commerce comes in. It's because it's incorporated. But we're unincorporated. We're unincorporated county. And all the land in this area is all private. We own the roads, we own everything. And if not collectively. I mean, like each person owns their like I've got 16 acres that I'm building here. And some people have 100 acres, or some people have like 7 acres. So it's just whatever a person's wanting to do, depending on what they're going to invest in, how much acreage. But anyway, so anyway, I get into tangents sometimes. Unincorporation makes it to where we are responsible for what happens here. So my neighbors have called me instead of calling the police, or the sheriff, because the sheriffs can come here if we call them. But I mean, good luck getting them there within 30 minutes. I mean, really, 20 to 30 minutes. If right now you call somebody, that's the lead time. So when I can be there just in a minute or two, it makes sense to work locally. And locally is how nature works naturally, everywhere. We don't centralize ownership over anything. A fox doesn't care what the badger's doing because the fox has got to do what the fox is doing and the badger's got to do what the badger's going to do, right? But we've got a whole bunch of people that are trying to determine what other people should be doing with their time and energy. And they're willing to use the state to force that to happen. That's causing a lot of problems. A lot of problems in the world. We shouldn't be asking or paying somebody else to do what we wouldn't do ourselves. So the incorporations, they assume ownership over the use of, or the use and maintenance of what they take care of, right? It's an incorporated entity. Nowhere in nature does that happen. It's all happening by what we call things, and our ignorance is, ignorance isn't stupidity. I mean, because people aren't stupid. It's just that we're so busy trying to pay to exist that sometimes you don't have the time and energy to research everything. You're gonna do what your friends are doing. You're gonna blend in because that's what makes sense. That's what's working, right? But is it working? I judge my life. Is it working for me by how many minutes of the day that I'm experiencing health, happiness, peace, and abundance? For me, that's the foundation of if I want to be able to do things, I want to be able to be healthy and be, feeling good. Because why not? If that's an option, that's what my options are going to be. And if you're that as often as you can, your diet is going to reflect that. Your lifestyle is going to reflect that. And hopefully, like what you're doing just in your life every day is going to reflect what you consciously want to do and create in this world. It's like I'm saying, it's about how we call things, right? Because we now have a modern society where on a driver's license, a person that has a penis can be labeled, can be called a female. And really, I don't care. I don't care what's under your clothes. I mean, I'm not planning on having sex with you. So, um, it doesn't matter to me what is going on in your bedroom, right? As long as it's consenting, adults, that's that's the only thing. You do you. But if we live in a society where somebody with a penis can be called a female, my car is now called my wheelchair. And I'm disabled because You can't ask for my medical records. That would be a HIPAA violation, and I don't have to divulge my medical history to you. So my claim, my status and standing, what you're assuming is me driving on a roadway, is actually me traveling in my wheelchair on a right of way. Right? Because I have the right to be able to get from here to there. And because I own this property, it is mine, and I get to determine what I call it. You know, like if I owned you, I might call you, I don't know, what name would I call you? I don't know, call you, hey, dipshit. Why you wanting somebody to own you? Yeah, then you'll come to it. So so I guess then I call you dipshit. Anyway, self ownership. Yeah. Um, and voluntarily consenting. And if I'm somebody might call this property real estate, but I just call it land. I call it private land, private property. And that has a lot of power, because I've had code enforcers come up and say I can't do things, and I said, yes, I can, and you should leave. And then they said, well, but I want to talk to you more. And I said, but I don't want to talk to you, and so you need to leave. You're trespassing now. And they leave. And sometimes they've sent me a little piece of paper in the mail, or they've stapled a little piece of paper to a stick and pounded it in the ground at the base of the driveway. I threw them away. I never called them. Well, I didn't ever call them. I did have a couple of, that's too long to go into right now. But anyway, we need to know what our rights are and what to call things. Because when we call things a certain thing, they have authority. The incorporated entity, the county, the state, the federal government, the the Vatican, right? I mean, we should be operating of our free will. And that's why I've built my ministry. If you hit # free will ministry _ AAH, you'll see what I have to say about some stuff. So anyway, it's all about what we call things. I mean, a government relies on our ignorance and our complacency and our belief that they are doing the best things for us. Right? Are they? Because if we called war, mass murder, or genocide for profit, do you think people would support that? Do you think 18-year-old kids just fresh out of high school, too poor for college, not yet intelligent enough to enter into the private sector, doing to offer services, or so they enter into the military, serve their country, serve the interest of the people? So why are so many coming back so depressed from being flown to the other side of the planet to be doing things that are causing them to be very depressed? Well, it's just war. It's just a word until you've been there. It's just a word until you don't know if the next bomb that goes off you won't hear. Right? Does it land on you next? That's why they're coming back all messed up. PTSD, falling asleep each night, not knowing if you're gonna wake up. Tell you what, that'll mess with you. It's all what we call things, though, right? So PTSD is a post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, I'd rather turn it into an order. And I found that through meditation, you can find peace. And it works in a lot of different ways too. All stressors that come into your experience into the stimulus of your environment, those are able to be handled, much more efficiently when you're calm, and when you are aware of your breath, and you're aware of the right now moment, and everything is the way you want it to be. How do you want to be? Calm, aware, capable of making good choices and actions that build the future you desire. So anyway, back to you're either gonna love this or you're gonna hate this. So, but this is me. Back to your rights to travel, your rights to land ownership, and it's not a right that it's given to you, but if you rightfully acquire it from, and there's a lot of ways to acquire property. So, people say, oh, well, yeah, only if you have $400,000. No, there isn't. you can get property for like $1,000 if you go in the right areas. So, but it's all what you call it. Life in so many directions is, what do we call it? And if you own you and you're a human being, that makes it to where nobody has the right of ownership over you. And when we start making humane decisions by not hiring somebody else to do things that I wouldn't do to you, and throw you in a cage and fine you all sorts of money for exercising your rights, we're going to have a peaceful world because people aren't pushing their will on other people. That's the way it works, right? I mean, I talk with a lot of people, and I don't push my will on them, even though sometimes people I think they're shocked by how much information I push out sometimes. But that's the thing. We're given a limited amount of time on this planet, and I don't want to talk about the Seahawks. I want to talk about real stuff. But if you're a human being, and I'm a human being, and if we live in the principles of self-ownership and a non-aggression principle, meaning that violence should only be used in the act of defense, and then you should be really, really good at it, right? I mean, if everybody knew that they were going to be held accountable for their actions, the people's actions become actions they want to be held accountable for. It's cause and effect. But it needs to be in a way that, nature teaches in cause and effect. So it has to happen in a natural way. In a natural way, I was explaining this to a friend just an hour ago. The natural way is try to squeeze a squirrel. And he even told me, he says, "What? Why is this guy trying to tell me about squeezing a squirrel?" And I said, try to squeeze a squirrel and see what happens to you. Whereas the citizen or the taxpayer, you can squeeze on them and they just keep giving you more money. And they work harder and they'll give you more and more and more, because every time you ask for more, they do it, right? Because you're a taxpayer, you're a citizen, you're a resident, you're these things that an outside entity has control over. It's called a corporate fiction. It's the birth certificate fraud. I mean, people think that you have to have the birth certificate, but you don't. It can be of benefit for you, but But as long as you know that it's not you. But most people get it at birth. See, there's a difference between certificate of live birth, which is you, the natural born human being that came into this world through the birth canal. But then then there's a birth certificate applied for, and that birth certificate is actually like your ability of working. It's like your business name. That's why it's in all capital letters. It's in corporations are always spelled out in all capital letters, or acronyms too. But if so I mean, like, your name has a capital, like mine, capital R on the first, and then lowercase Albert, and then whereas the birth certificate identity is capital R, capital O, capital B, capital E, all the way, right? And so if I thought that that was me, that has a lot of regulations over it, because that's me operating in commerce. If I wanted to have a business and I said, hey, I'm Robert Laming, and I'm going to come and do your plumbing as a public service, or a public offering, because I don't know you. We're relying on advertising and contracts to establish an exchange of energy. Or if I said, hi, I'm Rob, and if you need some plumbing done and you trust that I'm good at it, and I trust that you're going to give me something in compensation, or that I just want to donate my time or whatever, that we can just do that without regulation. See, that's where we can operate in a private domain or a public domain. But a lot of people don't even know that that exists. But here's proof. In Texas, they have, so there's dry counties, right? So the county, you can't buy beer or liquor. But so you and I could go to a restaurant, and at going to that restaurant, you say, hey, I want a beer. And the waiter or server, they would say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have a beer here. We're a dry county. And then if I don't drink anymore, but if I were to say, hey, I want a beer, and they'd say, oh, well, hey, Rob, how you doing? I'm like, yep, thanks. All right, yep. All right, I'll take, yeah, you know what, go ahead and just get me another one too. And that person's going to look and say, why the heck can he get a beer and I can't? Well, because I'm a private member of a drinking club at that same space and time where she is a public customer in the county, in the public domain, right? So there's two different standings. There's two different ways of doing the same thing, which is, you always have to have a choice, right? I mean, you're always either going to choose good or bad, or high or low, or left or right, or up or down, or I mean, that's just the way it is. There's always got to be a choice, because you've been given free will. That's why I've built this channel. I'm trying to help people recognize what that actually means. What does that mean to have free will? It means that you have a choice in everything that you do. I could come up to you and say, hey, you want to go on a date with me? You could say nope, or you could say yep, or you could say whatever you want, right? I mean, but at least there's two options. You can be the corporate fiction as an all capital entity that has a lot of rules and regulations over it. Or if you know your rights and you spend a little bit of time recognizing how to exercise them, you can also be a free, beautiful, independent, blessed, and beloved child of God that has freedom. Because that's what it takes. It takes stepping outside of the control. See, and that's okay. So that's the thing too. You always have these polarities, right? And when I say God, I talk about as the ultimate creator. Whatever invented everything that's going on here, because it does make sense for the most part if you go to nature. The cities, not so much. A lot of Babylon, Babylon, and on and on, and it just keeps on getting supported, and it doesn't really make sense. But it kind of looks glimmery over in the distance. So you got a choice in that, though. God gave us free will, and then if you have an adversary of God and free will, if that's an alignment, then you have an adversary of free will. And not having a choice would be the difference of having a choice, right? So by having a choice, we can choose to be in control. And are we in control of ourselves, or are we in control of something outside of ourselves? I've learned that I can only control myself. And that's a big enough job for me to be me, that I don't really want to be controlling anybody else, because I figure it's probably a pretty big job for them to be them. And if we talk and communicate and we share ideas and stuff, though, on things that are working for us, that everybody can do them pretty easily. It's something that, it isn't rocket science to be a human. It's just that we've been advertised a way of living that is pretty expensive. I mean, it really, it costs a lot to live. And that's why there's so many homeless folks. I mean, what if the investment made into 1 year of monthly rent for a person who isn't experiencing homelessness was actually put in towards an investment into a sustainable shelter that they own, right? So that way we wouldn't have to keep investing for a decade or more, or sometimes some people they're needing help every month for like decades and decades and decades, and then generationally their children don't know how to get a job and earn the money to pay for a shelter every month. So it's a lot of money that's being expended, and there's certain things that we should recognize, like Fred Flintstone, right? I mean, there's a cartoon, but he kind of really showed that when a man builds a house out of stone, it'll last a long time, right? Why, I don't know why we're building them out of matchsticks. We should have learned something from the Three Little Pigs too, right? But it's all choices. So if we recognize we can build out of bricks, or we can build out of rocks, or we can build out of all sorts of different bricks that look like blocks or bottles or bags of dirt, or I mean, there's just all sorts of ways to create shelter that is of a higher efficiency and affordability than what we're currently offering. We can be growing gardens locally. We have to fix our soil. For too long, we've ignored our soil. We send away all the compost. We send away all the nutrients that we run through our bodies and through our animals to the landfill, to the dump, somewhere else. We're always hauling something somewhere else. And then we're wondering why it's so expensive for fuel. If they had such an abundance of fuel because we were working locally instead of driving all over the place and needing things delivered from all over the place, we'd probably be seeing the dollar a gallon again that was in the 70s when I was growing up. Maybe it'd even be really affordable, 50 cents a gallon. We could be heating our homes efficiently without it costing us a third of our paychecks. There's different ways of doing life. That's what I'm trying to bring here on the Free Will channel. And I was going to definitely try to keep this under 30 minutes, because most people don't really watch for more than about 3 or 4. But for those who like to hear what I ramble about, I hope you have a great night, and hopefully you've enjoyed the view and some ideas that lead to self-ownership and a peaceful tomorrow where we all thrive. All right, thanks. Subscribe and like it if you will.